Hi, this is your host, Quanisha Green, your Black Woman CEO coach and the founder of the Black Woman Rise movement, and welcome to the Black Woman CEO podcast, a podcast dedicated to helping Black women entrepreneurs to get paid to do what they love, own their time, and achieve financial freedom. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
And again, I want to welcome everyone to the Black Woman CEO Expert Series, and this is our kickoff call. Yay! So, and hey, Dr. Monikah, she's here with us on the line.
Hello, everybody. Hello.
So grateful to have you here as you can say our keynote for the Black Woman CEO Expert Series, becoming the CEO of your life, right? And
Absolutely.
Awesome. So everyone, as I shared, we will have an Ask the CEO Q&A session. And just to let you know how that's going, so for those who are on the webcast, so if you're on the phone and you want to ask a question, you want to come over to the link that I share, which is the webcast. And in the chat is where you can post your question. We are going to have a moderated Q&A that way, so we won't be opening up the lines, but I will keep track of the questions, and we'll probably allow at least 10 to 15 minutes at the end of the interview so you can pick Dr. Monikah's brain. How does that sound, Dr. Monikah? Are you there, Dr. Monikah? Okay.
Yes, I had myself on mute, but I'm anticipating an excitement, so let's get started.
All right, awesome. So for everyone who's here, the Black Woman CEO Expert interview series is really to help you, right, the woman who's on path to building her business that will allow her to do what she loves, right? You eventually desire to work from home on your time and achieve financial freedom. And so this series is really going to help you learn the essentials, right, on what you need to do and how you can do it through the lenses of our speakers, our expert CEOs sharing their experiences. So as Dr. Monikah just said, let's get this party started. So Dr. Monikah, I didn't read your bio. I sent it to a lot of folks. It's going to be online, but I want you to introduce yourself, right? So first, who you be? Everyone knows I'm all about starting with the beingness of a person before we get into like what you do. So how would you describe yourself beyond what you do?
That's a great framing. You know, these days I am far more involved with my family and philanthropic efforts than I am with my business, to be honest with you, in terms of just time and effort. I am a wife. I am a mother of 4 grown children. The oldest is 24. The youngest is 20. And I also am in that kind of sandwich generation where you are not quite finished with your child raising. You know, we still helicopter over our children, and at the same time taking care of aging parents. My mom and dad are both over 70. My father is about to hit 86 soon. And so for me, one of the reasons why I started my business was to have the freedom to be with the people that I love and to have the financial breadth to be able to make choices out of, you know, what I wanted, what I desired, and not just what I feared or what I lacked.
And we'll definitely, I'm going to ask you some more questions about how you've integrated all that together. So thank you for telling us who you be. And I guess I should describe who you be to me because I forgot to share that with everyone. I did share in the emails, but I know folks are coming from different communities. So I'm Quanisha Green, the Black Woman CEO coach, and Dr. Monikah was one of my coaches that helped me to identify that expertise. I think it was, 2015, the fall of 2015. I was on Periscope, and this lovely, beautiful woman popped up, I think CEO in some subject line, and it caught my attention. And you were just teaching on what it meant to be a CEO. Right. And at the time, I just started my business. I just launched the Black Woman Rise movement, making some progress, but still feeling like I'm not quite getting this. But everything you said about what it meant to be a CEO just clicked, right? It clicked with me. I started doing what you said. So that's the key, people. She'll probably tell you this, implement. You'll probably hear Dr. Monikah say that to you. And then, I was, you can say, having success from your free tips. I said, let me hire her as my coach. And so we did private coaching together for a season, and And not just, it wasn't just about strategies and tips. You taught me so much about myself and how to continue to connect with my higher self and my intuition and letting that be my guide, even though, of course we want to seek wise counsel. So you really helped me to get in touch with myself. And so I'm so happy to share my Dr. Monikah. I'm going to own you, my Dr. Monikah, with everyone here, right? And maybe that would be a good way to segue into your mission, and particularly what you work to do with, women, or you can say people like me, right, who are looking to walk and master their CEO.
Well, and that's part of my pride and joy of how my work has evolved, because when I first started, my first career out of college was as a financial planner, and the bulk of my business for the first, I'll say 12 years, maybe 10 years, was all about implementation and strategy execution, the hard skills of running a business, meaning sales, meaning profit maximization, systems, also improving the communication and leadership among team members, whether they be executives or managers, et cetera, and then later on entrepreneurs. And as I also evolved and I grew spiritually, as Quanisha, that I started traveling to Egypt once a year for several years, and I began to question, when you get to a certain pinnacle. I got to the Inc. 500 in 2008, and it was also the worst financial year of my life. And so for me to have that living inside of an oxymoron was a great wake-up call, because it allowed me to really reconnect, and remember what was important to me. And my work started to integrate a spiritual component to it, not religious, not dogmatic, but very much about, the inner calling of your soul, and integrating that with the way you do business and the way that you master your life. And so becoming the CEO of your life isn't just about, crossing things off of a to-do list, because a lot of times we put things on a to-do list just to appear busy and to give ourselves the panacea of activity to kind of numb ourselves perhaps to the lack of progress that we may be making in our lives. And so for me, it's much more about delving into what's deeply true for you. And then from that root, then the tree is born, so that the branches then reach out to your community, to your family, to the legacy of financial wealth that you're building, and so forth. But it all starts with that root of that spiritual foundation.
I love that root, and you can say the source, right, of yourself, but like you said, more than that, right, that spiritual, deeper self, and letting that kind of direct you in all those different areas. So thank you for letting us know, like, that path, and how, that even if that it's okay for your business to change over time as you get more clarity, or even clarity on what your client might need or where they need to go. Yeah. So, I mean, you kind of answered this, but what would you say if you had to, maybe in a few words, say, like, your area of expertise, and then why it's so important?
Wow. So there are 4 pillars, I think, that make a business work. And that is first of all, it is the money that the business makes, the sales that the business brings in. And you've heard me say this before, but just like the purpose of your life is not to make oxygen, if you're not generating oxygen to breathe, then you're not going to be able to live out the purpose of your life. And in the same way, the purpose of your business is not to make money. But if you're not making money, then you're not available for the purpose, the higher purpose of your business. And so we start with the money conversation, because for many people, you need to get over the survival stuff, the desperation, the iffiness, the hesitation, just the ickiness that people feel around money. You have to get over that in order to be able to be a true contribution to people. And you have to get yourself out of the way, so your survival can't be at stake. If every client is do or die, if every paycheck or every invoice that gets paid, it's like the difference between, rent or payroll or your livelihood, then you need to rethink some things. You need to get a job first and then operate from a place of strategy. So we start with the money conversation. And then from the money conversation, then we start with the message conversation. And the message conversation is really like, how in school when you were learning math, you learned about the Venn diagrams, those circles that have that intersection in the middle. So imagine if, imagine if the deepest calling of your soul, like your zone of genius, this thing that you could do with your eyes closed and two hands tied behind your back and a limp leg, and you can still do it gracefully and people are still awed. That thing that you do with the deepest need of your ideal client, and then it meets in the middle. Like, what is it that you want them to know? What is it that you want them to have? What is it that you want them to do as a result of being empowered through your zone of genius? So that message needs to be clear, right? And then the third piece is, now that you know what it'll take for your business to stand on its own two feet and what it stands for, then how are you going to get the word out? So that's the marketing piece. And then underneath all of that is the systems, right? So like you have to have systems for your sales and your marketing and your message, your branding. And those 4 pillars stand on who you are as a leader, as a master of your own life and of your business. And, starting and growing a business is really one of the most strenuous and fulfilling exercises in self-realization and personal development that you'll ever undertake. I was going to say volunteer, but some people don't volunteer for it. I certainly didn't. And so, when you master those 4 pillars and you stand on your own personal mastery, then anything can happen, like the worst financial year of your life, and you can still pick up and recreate wealth and recreate contribution. And you're not threatened by the ups and downs and the vicissitudes of the business, world and the ups and downs of market fluctuations and so forth. So it increases your confidence, and then, of course, it frees you to be even more of a contribution.
That was a lot. Gotta let that sink in, everything you just said. Right, that whole, like you said, is mastering yourself, right, at the very foundation, so then you can go on and do these other components. And I love that you said, it's not about making money, but you need to make money, right, in order to get to where you're going to go. So it makes you think about what is your higher order purpose. Yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead.
And we as women particularly are so ill-equipped. As a generalization, of course, I'm not putting everybody in that bucket, but we as women, as a generalization, are so ill-equipped to have that conversation, and not because there's some kind of inherent insufficiency in us, but just because we have not been prepared, socialized, trained. That's not part of our culture. Typically in the business world, I don't know if you can notice that my voice is a little strained. I've been trying to get it back to normal for a while now. So if I have to put myself on mute for a second just so I can cough, please excuse me, and let that be the point of privilege for the entire call. So, when we are little girls, the way that we get love and the way that we get approval and attention is by playing nice. And by putting other people's needs ahead of our own so that we don't appear selfish, so that we don't appear aggressive, so that we don't appear insensitive and so forth. And I remember a mentor of mine saying to me once, and I shall never, ever forget it. He said to me, the problem with good people is that good people often are reluctant to do the bad things that bad people do to get the good done. And I thought, wow, I mean, can't we just play nice, Can't we all just get along? And what he meant to say to me, and this is one of the reasons why I love having male mentors as well, because they give me a different perspective. But what he meant was, you've got to hang up the nice thing for a little bit, and you've got to be okay with being aggressive. You've got to be okay with asking for what you want, demanding what you want, assuming the sale, being uncomfortable, doing uncomfortable things. It doesn't, maybe even doing hard and difficult things. It doesn't mean that it's not meant for you if it's difficult or uncomfortable. It just means you're unfamiliar with it. That's all. And so every time that you do a thing that you're unfamiliar with, it's going to have some degree of discomfort. It's going to have a degree of uncertainty. And to the degree that you can be okay with discomfort and uncertainty, then you can learn quickly and you can master those things, and so that you're no longer uncomfortable with them or uncertain by them. And so, for women especially, this is, and it's my heart to empower women leaders and women entrepreneurs. I want to show us how to be ambidextrous, how to lead with heart, but lead with gumption, and stand on our power. They're not mutually exclusive.
So I have a question that's not quite on our interview list, but how does that show up particularly for Black women? Because one thing I found that as Black women, we've been socialized to do everything ourselves, right? The strong Black woman, or we have to be 2 or 3 times as good to get as much as the next person. So how does that asking for help show up for us? Like, have you found that there's anything, that we do have a certain walk, and how have you maybe guided Black women in particular to handle that?
Yeah, and I say keep the main thing the main thing. What I mean by that is, we just recently had a Grammy celebration, and people were up in arms because if anybody saw that, I don't want to date the conversation, right? But if anybody saw the performance that Beyonce did with her album Lemonade, and just being pregnant with twins, and it was just very goddessy, and it was just a performance for the ages. And those types of performances are the reason why people tune in to the Grammys. That's what gives them the ratings that they have. And yet, she walked away arguably robbed, because Lemonade, as vanguard and as forward-thinking and as groundbreaking as that album was, it did not garner the validation of the Grammys as the album of the year. It went to somebody else. Now, you can make it racial and say, it went to the white girl or whatever, but, those arguments are fruitless. The important thing is, the reason why those things can happen is because there's a certain level of ownership that we do not have access to. And so if you're making the shot, if you own your masters, if you are financially sovereign, there's a big difference between being financially free and financially sovereign. The difference is that your freedom is conditional and sovereignty is established. And so, you could be financially free as long as you're bringing in the money, but as soon as you get broke, you're no longer free. But financially sovereign people know how to create that freedom over and over again. And so if you're looking for validation from a system that is not designed to support you, validate you, strengthen you, or have your best interest at heart, then you're playing a losing game. And so the role for Black women, it's not go create, go revolutionize the system or whatever. It's just not designed for you, right? And so if you already know that, then you can stop being pissed, you can stop being surprised, you can stop being disappointed, you can stop being bitter, and just build the thing that you want to have, right? So like Tyler Perry, for example, this is one of the examples that men can teach us about so much. Tyler Perry was not getting his plays produced. So he decided he was going to produce them themselves. And then those plays turned into movies, and those movies turned into a Tyler Perry studio. And the Tyler Perry Studios became a production company. It wasn't just a studio house. It wasn't just a production company. It was a studio house. So now he's actually making other people's movies and other people's productions. And he has a say on those things. And he's building wealth for his family, and he's leaving a mark on his industry because of those business decisions that he's made. The man has not won any award of note.
I didn't think about that. That's what, like, but he's walking in his power, right?
Yeah. So it's like, you got to keep the main thing the main thing. This is not about a ribbon. It's not about a trophy. It's none of that. In fact, those things are the things that people give you when they're really trying to distract you from your true power. So if you could just focus on keeping the main thing, then you won't be distracted by those things, and you won't be disappointed and discouraged when you don't get them.
Love it, love it. So how did you come to own your expertise in this in your role as a CEO of your company? Like, what has that path been for you?
Well, since I've been a stubborn child ever since I was, itty bitty, and so for me, the most the best learned lessons always came with a 2x4. And when I told you that my first career out of college was as a financial planner, and in the height of that career, and I was an up-and-coming, stockbroker, and things were looking up and everything, I got a stage 4 cervical cancer diagnosis and given about a year to live. And so for me, that was heartbreaking. It was, the height of uncertainty. And I had to get really clear. One of my spiritual mentors said, you have to choose. Do you want to live or do you want to die? Not to be cavalier about it. Of course, there was a lot of processes and health considerations that went into that. But that was the first thing. The first thing is to decide what direction are you heading into. And the fact that she posed that question as though the power of my living or dying were up to me. The assumption underneath the question was powerful, right? Because a lot of times when you're facing a mortal disease, when you're facing a mortal disease, you think that there's a lot of things that are not up to you. And so we start praying to this external outside God that has our fate in his or her hands, and as though we have no say in the way that our life goes. And I had to get very clear that I had to be an agent, a cause in my own salvation, as it were. I had to save myself. I had to be my own hero. The doctors didn't have my answers. The health insurance companies did not have my answers. My parents certainly did not have my answers. As much as they loved me, they're unequipped to, evolve me. And so, I had to take it into my own hands. And it was around that time that I also got fired, or was almost fired, because then I turned that conversation into a consulting retainer with my employer. So my employer became my first client. And so to be able to do all of that while still facing a cancer diagnosis, I didn't know if I was going to be around to fulfill that consulting agreement 12 months from the time we signed it. So it gave me a lot of gumption. It gave me a lot of chutzpah, and through my own, spiritual journey, traveling to Egypt, and a lot of prayer, meditation, and journaling, fasting, and a whole bunch of other spiritual practices, I've come to know that it's kind of like whatever that divine spark is, whatever that divine energy, spark, it needs my eyes and ears and mouth and arms and legs in order for it to walk this world, to walk this earth. And so I am its vehicle. I am its channel in that sense, And when I get my ego out of the way, when I get my preferences out of the way, when I get my timelines out of the way, then things can happen way more quickly and much more gracefully than I ever could have imagined or anticipated. And so for me, becoming the CEO of my own life, it wasn't pretty. It wasn't graceful. A lot of times I went kicking and screaming. And to a certain degree, new level, new devil, you're always facing new resistances. And that's why I'm still facing those now. It's not like you're ever cooked. You're never done. But at least I have gotten so honest with myself that when I see that it's resistance, I do not try to lie to myself and say it's something else. Oh, maybe it's not time. No, it's just that I'm unwilling to put forth the effort. oh, it's just that, the things haven't lined up and I don't have the right resources. No, it's just that I've not been disciplined enough to, access the resources that are available to me, et cetera, right? So I've become much more brutally honest with myself, which allows me to shift more quickly, because then I'm not, trying to walk and see through a debris of bullshit that I've given myself, excuse my French.
So it sounds like you're always searching for, I want to say you're controlling the situation, but not someone who's trying to always be in control, but the personal responsibility, right?
That's right.
Because the one thing we always have control over is ourselves. And so it sounds like you're always thinking, instead of like the victim mentality in the sense of something's happening to me, it's how can I, act on something.
Yeah. And it's just a different framework, like what if everything that ever happened to you, no matter whether it was good or bad, because those good and bad labels, when I was going through it, when I was 24, cancer was the worst thing that could ever happen to me. And now here we are 16 years later, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Which one is right, the 24-year-old Monikah or the 40-year-old Monikah, And so it's all a matter of perspective, and it's all a matter of a decision to frame it. And so, when you live long enough to know that you will make it to the other side of whatever that catastrophe or calamity is, then every time that such a calamity happens, you don't freak out as much as before, because it's like, you know what, I have made it through worse things than this. I will be just fine. And it's not so much that I'm controlling anything, to your point. It's more like it's a partnership between what I can, have control over, or what I can manage, what I can do, what I can create, and the trust and surrender that there's a divine intelligence orchestrating all of this to my highest good. And so what if all of the things that have happened, whether they be labeled good or bad, instead of quote unquote happening to me, they happened for me.
I love that reframe.
And if those things are happening for me, then there must be some benefit to it that isn't just a silver lining. It's the substance of blessing. It's the substance of goodwill. And so for me, that began with looking at cancer as the best thing that ever happened to me, because it was because I was so urgent about putting my world upside out, right side up, that I began my business. That would have never happened. I wouldn't have had the courage to start my business if somebody said, you know what you ought to do? I would have been like, yeah, no, I'm fine. I make good money as a stockbroker. But it was a 2x4, like cancer. It was a 2x4, like divorcing my first husband, like having to care for a toddler. All of those things kind of created the perfect storm to say, oh, wow, I don't know if I can handle this. And so walking every day and handling it gave me sufficient proof to know that I can handle whatever else comes my way until I'm not here anymore. And that's the message that I want to give to everybody listening. It's like there are things that are going to catch you at the knees, that are going to bring you to the floor. There are going to be things that may challenge your faith. There may be things that challenge the status quo. There may be things that challenge your definition of success and so forth, and which by itself is an ever-evolving thing anyway. But just because they challenge them, just because you've been brought to your knees, doesn't mean that you can't stand up again.
It doesn't mean that, bouncing back.
Yeah, right. So there's that point of, but resilience isn't just a thing you're born with. It's a thing that you must decide for. You have to choose it.
Oh, there was so much there. So, well, thank you for sharing that, because I think, in that you shared how you decided to start your business, right? Even in that choice to live, right? That added all into it. And then even sharing some of the early challenges that you faced, and particularly not just how you overcome them, like in the how-to, but the mindset, right? And not just the mindset. It's almost like a life orientation you had to take on, a way of being. Right, in order to overcome some of these challenges. And now, as you said, as challenges have come along the way, that you can make it on the other side of whatever you're facing. So with all that has gone on, right, how have you integrated, work and business and life and self-care and family? Like, how did all that come together for you, or at least even at now, the stage that you are, how does it look now? Just wondering how that has looked along the path.
Well, at first, my business, I was my business, right? So when people were hiring a speaker, I was the speaker. When somebody was hiring a consultant, I was the consultant. When somebody was hiring a coach, I'm the coach. And now my business has evolved to there's a division of it that's about strategic execution, that's about consulting on the plan of it. Some of it includes content marketing, some of it includes curriculum design, because that's how I started in business anyways, was designing a program that other people wanted to buy and license off of me. And then there's the speaking part, and then there's the coaching part and so forth, and there's, digital programs and online programs. You're part of the Fanatical Focus 40 program that we're doing now. And so, but what that has allowed me to do is to, diversify the income streams that my business has so that it isn't dependent on my presence. And that I can take off. Like just now, I went 3 weeks to Florida so that I could be with my family. It just so happened that I was also doing a training workshop in Florida, which is how I lost my voice, and I'm struggling to get it back. But those things would not have been available if I always had to be, manning the fort. And that comes with time. I didn't have a plan from the very beginning. I think the benefit that people have now is that now there's so many resources. There's YouTube videos. You can learn how to do practically anything from a YouTube video, right?
Yeah.
But when you get to a certain level of success and you get to a certain level of leadership, you cannot piecemeal your success anymore. You have to be strategic about it, and that's the power of a mentor. That's the power of a community of like-minded people who keep you accountable, like a mastermind and so forth. And so, for me, if I knew then what I know now, the learning curve wouldn't have been as steep. But I also would have missed out on the raw ingredients of what it would have made my now possible. So, for people who are listening to this and are struggling to grow their business, you have to get really clear about what are the things that are bringing money into your business. Because sometimes we get so caught up with, I got to rebrand, and I got to do a photo shoot, and I got to do a new website, and my content, my blog. None of those things are bringing you sales right now. They're all for a longer-term thing, right? They build thought leadership, they build the messaging part and everything else. But in terms of I need to bring in $10,000 this week to make, my bills, or I need to bring in $50,000 to make payroll, et cetera, then that's more of a direct sales effort. If you know those things, if you know those distinctions, then you can make strategic decisions in your business and not feel guilty that you're leaving anything else behind or that you're dropping any balls, because all you're ever doing is just managing your own orientation. And if your orientation in your business is, I've got to get money in, then obviously the website's just going to have to wait. The business cards will have to wait, right? And so, to be able to make those kind of strategic decisions for some people requires some deliberation, and it requires, surrounding yourself with, like I said, like-minded individuals. If you don't already have a mentor, get one, so that you can come to that point of clarity way faster than, the 16 years that it's taken me being in business.
Yeah, I would say that's another place where you really supported me on my journey, was asking me, how is this revenue generating, Quanisha? And I was like, oh. And so I asked myself that question all the time, and then I ask my clients that question all the time, right?
Yeah,
and this is your focus right now in these first 1 to 3 years, right? Or however long your startup phase might be, some people's longer, is that question of how are you bringing in revenue? Is this a revenue generating activity versus just something that's free, right? It's you can look great and not make money, but if you are about, you're really walking in that CEO role, right? It is about that ultimate question. So that's definitely a place that you've helped me.
And to be clear, it's not money for the sake of money. You're not doing it from a place of greed.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing it from a place of service. I'm not going to be available for my child if I'm not breathing.
Yes.
I have to breathe first. And so, speaking of children, when a child is first born, the first thing that they do is check for their breathing, right, to make sure that you're breathing in air. Because if you're outside of your mother's womb, and when you're supposed to be taking in oxygen and you're not, you risk things like brain damage or, diminished lung capacity or whatever the case may be. The first thing that a doctor does when the baby is born is check for breathing. And so, it's the same thing with your business. Your business is your baby. You have to make sure it's breathing.
I love that. I love that analogy, or that, even just that imagery, right? Because I think it helps shift the mindset from that sometimes people can be uncomfortable around asking for money to seeing it as like, this is a vital part of what I do, right? Am I really being a business owner if I'm not making sure the respiratory system here is working?
Yeah.
So with that, because I know, so we're saying, like you said, this is the breadth of your business, right? So how have you set goals and executed and stay focused? Because I see that you can use that as a bar sometimes, right? And of course, the other pillars that you talked about. So how do you go about setting goals and executing and staying focused while you keep these things in mind? Do you have like a hierarchy that you use? Like, how do you do that?
Do you mean in terms of my income goals?
Well, you can talk about income, or just in general, like any goals that you set in your business, just under your CEO role, just to help some of the other ladies think about that.
Sometimes they circulate. Sometimes the revenue and the thought leadership, the branding, contribution, sometimes they circulate, and you have to just kind of, like I said, manage the primacy of each objective. There have been times when establishing my thought leadership was important to get to the next level, and so I published books, or I published, academic articles, or I started designing programs so that people could see that I knew what I was talking about. The webinars are part of that thought leadership as well, and so I started creating them because I know that it was important for people to. As a matter of fact, when you and I met on Periscope, that was part of my thought leadership strategy as well. Get on a platform that it feels easy to me. So if people were to say to me, you have to write a blog post every day, I would have said, hell no. But get on Periscope every day? Sure. I can turn on the webcam and just yap about the things that I know about, It came easy to me, so it was easy to be disciplined about it. And so you've got to figure out what the platform is that works for you and that is integrated with where your clients are, because it does you no good to be on Periscope if your clients aren't there. It does you no good to be on Facebook if your clients are not there. Just because everybody's doing it doesn't mean that it's strategically useful for you and your business. And so, you have to make decisions like that. That's what I mean about being strategic. It's like, here's another life lesson that stuck with me. When I was in high school, as a matter of fact, Phil's Academy, we had to take creative arts. Was a requirement. I took a theater class, and the teacher was a playwright, like a real active playwright in Boston. And he gave us a homework assignment to take one scene of one act of one play and break it down line by line to explain why that particular character was saying that particular line at that time. Did it move the character development along? Or did it move the plot along? And if it didn't, what would I put in its stead? And even though I was 14 or 15 at the time, I don't remember, that lesson has stayed with me because, again, it was a powerful assumption underneath the question. The question was, if it didn't work, what would you put in its stead? Assumes that the pen is in my hand and that I could edit the outcome of the plot of this play or the character development for this particular character. And so I started thinking, what if my life were a play? I'm the main character, and I could change the character development of this person, meaning me. Or I could change the plot, meaning the way my life turns out. What if the pen is in my hand and I could do that? And so when that has always stayed with me. So when I've approached business decisions, it's always been with that powerful assumption underneath the question. Does this move me forward? And not because everybody else is doing it. One of the biggest temptations that we have in this current time, in this current day and age, is we've all kind of devolved into being high schoolers. Like if everybody else is doing it, we want to do it too because that's what the popular kids, that's what the cool kids are doing. And it's like, just like Mom would say, right? If everybody was jumping off the bridge, would you do it?
Would you go? Right.
Now, thank God that was a rhetorical question, right? Because it seems like there's a lot of people who are answering yes based on results. But that's the point that you have to make as a CEO of your company. You have to decide, where's your horizon? Where do you want to go? Do you want your company to be a volume provider, meaning it's low prices but you serve a lot of people, so you have to keep things affordable, right? Are you a Walmart or are you a Neiman Marcus? Are you a boutique? That people don't even know outside of their own region because it's unique to your particular market. So when you make decisions like that, it's not wrong to be Walmart. Now, Walmart is a Fortune 500 company.
Right?
They make billions and billions and billions of dollars. It is not wrong to be the Walmart of your industry. But if that's where you're headed, a lot of times people have Rolls-Royce intentions with a Pinto. Or vice versa, and it doesn't work. So that lack of congruency is translated in your marketing, and so that's why you end up looking inconsistent and unreliable to your market because you haven't decided which lane are you going to stay on. But you have to pick a lane. And I am not the cheapest coach in the world. I'm also not the most expensive. But what I am is what I do that nobody else does the way that I do, and I can say that unequivocally, is a rigorous integration of spiritual foundation with business principles. Nobody does it like I do. I can say that unequivocally. And it has taken me going to Egypt, almost 10 times. It has taken me challenging my own religious beliefs, my own spiritual beliefs, and so forth, and then being able to walk the talk so that I can then take people through that journey also in their own. And so when you can say that, when you can stand flat-footed and say, this is my lane, then nobody can touch you. It doesn't matter whether you raise your prices, move states or countries or hemispheres or whatever. It's your lane. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense. It was only a pause, and I'll be very transparent. My son was coming up the steps with his dad. That's that mompreneur life. So I was like, let me mute so everyone didn't have to hear coming up the steps. So that was the pause there. So, I just love that. And I love how you walk in that. You're like, this is what I'm good at, and I know it. Right? I know this is my unique spin. I'm pretty sure your doctorate helps with that. Awesome.
Yes, right. Well, and that was also very strategic, right? So I knew that this is the lane that I wanted to play in. So I have to get a PhD in comparative religions, not because I have to, because people won't hire me without it, but for my own intellectual satisfaction. I wanted to know that I knew what I was talking about. So for me, it meant rigorous, deep learning in the field of my choice, which in this case is comparative religions. If I'm talking to somebody and saying, all roads lead to God, I've got to be able to know that, right? Like you can't just read one particular sacred text, ignore all the others, and then make that assertion, because you don't know enough to be able to make that assertion. And so that's and the same thing with business. It's like, I can't make an assertion to people that the first thing that you have to concern yourself with is oxygen, unless that is true across industries, across verticals. Is that true for manufacturing? Yep, it's true for manufacturing. Is it true for retail? Yep. Is it true for the tourist industry and the service industry? Yep. What about professional services? Yeah. Well, by God, I just ran into a universal principle. What do you know? So it's by walking the talk that I can stand flat-footed and say, yeah, this is what I do and this is what I know. And the challenge that a lot of people make now, the mistake that a lot of people make now is that, they get downsized from a company and then they just open up the doors and hang up their shingle and say, okay, I'm a coach now. And I have too much respect and the word has cheapened as of the last 15 years. But before it was coaching, it was about mentoring. And in order for you to be able to mentor someone, you've got to share your walk. If you haven't walked, there's nothing for you to mentor about. And so, I take that sacred trust very seriously. And for anybody who is looking at your life and saying, okay, well, I'm ready to become the CEO of my life, then the first thing that I invite you to look at is, where is it that you can unequivocally say, like I know in the bone marrow of my bone marrow that this is true. The way that I know that about, somebody's spiritual walk, that you must, a lot of times people say, well, you can either be spiritual or you can be business savvy, but you can't be both. And my message is you cannot be business savvy unless you're spiritually grounded. And you cannot be spiritually grounded unless you have some experience in the world. Because you've heard of the term, sometimes people are so heavenly that they're no earthly good. Yes. And so for me, it's like you've got to be able to manage both. That's the message behind the Word became flesh, and the Word became manifest. And so it is you, as an idea in the mind of God, becoming manifest and showing up in your highest, grandest vision of who you are. And I don't mean who you are like your personality. I mean who you are like who you were created to be.
Right.
And so what is it that and what is the message that you want to leave the world? Like if it was up to you to make the world better, where would you start? And that's the hint for that is your zone of genius. The hint for that is your unduplicable talent. It is the thing that you have a heart for, that you will do every day for the rest of your life, that will fascinate you, that you'll spend time studying, that you'll go to conferences for, that you'll talk to people about, that you'll, procrastinate on what you're quote unquote supposed to be doing so that you can surf the net and read more about it. Those are hints. People are always talking about, I want to find my purpose. Those are hints. Your purpose is right in front of you. It's right there on top of your nose. And it's the things that make you pissed off, that draw your passion, the things that you can spend hours discussing and debating and arguing and researching and so forth. Instead of consuming all that information because you're so passionate about it, put something out. What do you say about it? And the PhD journey, I did it twice, once for comparative religions and once for psychology. The PhD journey is about, given everything that has already been said in this field, what do you have to say? What do you have to contribute to this field? And so it's the first step in owning your own mastery. In the academic journey, so to speak. So you've got to do that in the business mastery as well. That's why I called my company CEO Mastery, because it is an integration of your personal life, your spiritual foundation, and your business acumen.
I just love that idea of it's like we consume, right? And sometimes we do it formally, like through education and all these other pieces. But then the question is, what are you creating? Or just that question that you said of, what do you think, right? Yeah. Because that's going to be your worldview to filter through your values and your experiences, right? And that's where I wrote something online just yesterday that your worldview is your USP, is your unique selling proposition. Let's think beyond the niche,
I love that.
Right? And so that's all that comes into that. And that's what I hear you saying of like walking in that, right? Mastering it, master your trade, but also walk in it in the way it only that you can, right? Because I could have took comparative religion and psychology, and I could have thought about business and came up with something totally different, right? Because it's all filtered through Dr. Monikah's life, and just how it's all going to be filtered through our listeners' life, right? Even this conversation, I'm pretty sure all the folks in the call will be getting different, takeaways and all these things as they filter in your advice. So, as we kind of transition to our Ask the CEO, I wanted to kind of do our closing questions here, which I feel like you went into, but I guess maybe just for clarity though, like what is that one piece of wisdom you would share with the woman who's, either the woman's frustrated building her business and she desires to become the CEO master or this rock star CEO, right? Like, or another way to think about it is, what do you wish someone told you when you started this journey?
Stop comparing my journey to other people's, and start listening to that inner voice. A lot of times the reason why we are looking outside of ourselves for best practices or for, how is somebody else doing it, or how far along should I be given how far along somebody else is because you don't trust your own inner voice. You don't trust your own inner compass. And it is the most important tool in your toolbox for you to design your own journey, you know, and to live your life. I mean, if I was interested in living Quanisha's life, I could see why paying attention to Quanisha's life would be important to me. But I'm much more interested in living Monica's life and living it to the best of my ability. So I've got to be able to tune in. And I wish I would have done that earlier. I would have saved myself so much grief and heartache.
I love that. Design your own journey. And what's your personal mantra or motto or saying or quote that you live by?
I always check myself with this particular question because I always say questions are the creative acts of intelligence. So whenever I'm tripping and whenever I'm just kind of, you know, spinning in a tizzy, I always ask myself, who's speaking? And what I mean by that is there's a part of you that is frenetic and terrorized and, you know, small-minded and naysayer and doubting and so forth. And that's the small part of you. And the higher self or the evolved or the Christ self part of you, that part doesn't have questions. That part already knows. That part is certain. And that part isn't threatened by doubts. And so when I hear myself talking small and I ask myself who's speaking, it's an automatic checkpoint. I'm like, oh, okay, I got small again. Okay, my bad. Reframe, you know. So it's a great way for me to bring myself back to center.
I love that question. Who is speaking? So what's the number one success strategy? You shared so many, but what would you say is the number one success strategy or tip you would give to the women or, you know, our Black women CEOs who are on the call who are in these early phases of building a business?
Fail fast.
Fail fast.
That's what I would say. It's like if you hear something sounds like a good idea, okay, execute. Try it on. Take some action. Because a lot of times we're like studying this and studying that, and we're collecting notes and we're joining webinars and we're signing up for lists, and it's like it's all collecting dust. And you're not doing anything with it. And you think that the reason why you're not further along is because you haven't gotten to that program or this webinar or this class or whatever. And it's like, no. What you've got to do is dust off some of those notes and actually put them into action. And one of the reasons why we hesitate to do that is because we don't want to fail. But if you think about it, you not taking action is producing the same result as you doing something and failing. So you might as well. Because at least with failing, you will have learned something.
Right, you know.
It's like, okay.
You got some information, right? Versus it all being in your head. I love that. Fail fast. Well, that closes, I guess, the interview questions that we formally had. So thank you, Dr. Monikah. This is, beyond great. So I am going to set... I'm sorry, go ahead.
I said thank you for being patient with my crappy voice.
And then thank you for being patient with our technology challenges. So I do want to honor Dr. Monikah's time, and I know we started a little later. So what I'm going to formally do is set our timer for 10 minutes, everyone who's listening and active, for our Q&A, because I do want to be mindful of that, and also your voice. I know you've been talking for a while. So I'm going to set that. And we do have some questions here in the chat. And ladies, as I said, you can post your questions in the chat. We got some ahead of time, too, for Dr. Monikah for our Ask the CEO Q&A. So the question that we have here, just for anonymity, I won't say anyone's name. I'll just say the question. So the question is, how have you all managed balancing your personal and business presence to the world in the world of social media? So how have you managed balancing your personal and business presence to the world, but in social media? You can say in the social media realm.
You know, I'll be really, really honest with you. The only reason I share personal things in social media is if it fulfills a business purpose. I don't share it for the sake of sharing it. I don't use Facebook as a venting machine. You know, I have people who support me for that. I have journals for that. You know, and so the only reason I use social media is to stay connected and to put forth the messaging that I want to put forth. It's not for me to divulge personal details that have nothing to do with my business life. For that, the people who need to know those things, they already know them. They're already in my life. They already have my cell phone number. They already come to my house. We already have dinners and coffees and breakfasts and so forth. So I don't need to broadcast it. But that's a personal decision.
Well, I think that's good to give some people some idea of, you can ask. And once again, it's still that question of, is it too much? But that's what someone decides. But is this a story that's highlighting, a teachable moment, right, or something related to the area of expertise that you want to share with your community? Yeah. So that's one way you can use that as a.
It's one of the reasons why I haven't commented at all about the political landscape of our country in the last 18 months. I've talked about principles and I've talked about commitments and so forth, but I've not mentioned anybody's name. I've not said who I'm voting for, not voted. You know what I mean? Like all of those things are personal. They have nothing to do with my business. So I'm very deliberate about what I put forth.
Thank you. So another question here that I think many of us, even me, I want to know. Did your friendships and support group change when you became successful? And then some sub-questions. How did you cope with that, and was it a lonely journey?
Yes, and yes, and yes. And how I coped, sometimes I cried when I don't drink anymore, but when I used to drink, sometimes I would, drown my sorrows. And so as I've gotten older, as I've gotten better, as I've gotten more mature, I've developed coping mechanisms that don't have to put my health or my professionalism at peril. And so it was difficult, and then there's some people who you could see the hunger in their eyes, right? You could see that they want it so bad. But what they want is the glory. They think the glory and the process are somehow mutually exclusive, and they're not. You cannot have the glory without going through the process. And so, if you're not willing to go through the process, then you haven't earned the glory. And you cannot, you can only ride somebody's coattails but for so long before they either rip and neither one of you is going anywhere, or they throw you off. So, for me, that meant there were a couple of friendships that, for example, one particular friend and I were estranged from each other for 7 years.
Wow.
Before we came back full circle, and it was very touching and vulnerable and, emotional and so forth. And I love her to pieces, and I will love her for the rest of my life. The relationship, the friendship is certainly different, right? Because both of us were 7 years older. Our lives were different. Our businesses were different. But we were also more honest, about what got in the way and so forth. So that made it a deeper and richer connection. And if we were all just, buying each other's bull crap.
I love it. And I even love that, the idea that even if something's lost, right, a friend but you can always come back to it, right, and try to repatch it up and see if it's mendable in some way. So thank you for sharing that. I know sometimes along the way I have dealt with loneliness, even in the 2 years that I've gone full time. So that's why I was like, what did you do? I need some tips, because working, I think sometimes, at least for me, I had this vision of working from home, and then I actually started to do it, and I was like, I miss the sound of other people near me, or folks going in and out the room, or the water cooler talk, right? I didn't think about those aspects of traditional work, the socialization aspect that would be missing with me being home, or me being home with little kids, right? So that's right. That aspect.
Right. Well, that's why, the conferences and the networking events are so important, because it allows you to kind of have that adult moment, right, and that professional moment.
Yes, adult conversation. So important. Okay, so another question that we have here was, how did you keep believing in your vision even at those times where you were not making a profit?
Man, I wish I had some smart and noble answer for this. But honestly, sometimes the only thing that kept me moving was, I am not going back to my mama's house. Okay, that's the low that's the low line that I am unwilling to cross. I'm not doing that. I'm not going back to my father and my mother's house. When I left for college, I said I wasn't coming back unless it was to visit, and I plan to do just that. And so sometimes it wasn't about believing in my vision. It was just about avoiding a particular pain, right? And sometimes we tend to judge ourselves. It's like, well, shouldn't a vision pull you forward? Sometimes. But when you're in survival mode, you don't have any RAM. You don't have bandwidth for vision. You have bandwidth for, like, where's the next check? Where's the next rent going to come from? Where's the next mortgage payment going to be? How is that going to be handled? You know what I mean? So we've got to give ourselves grace. It's like, when you're in a survival conversation, there is no room for vision. And when you are in a vision conversation, there is no room for slacking because it's pulling you forward. So you've just got to know what game you're playing.
I love that. So someone asked, how did you deal with transitions as you changed the focus of your business thanks to your own growth or new interests? So I know you said you had some different shifts. So how did you deal with those transitions as you changed focus?
Some of them were very smooth. Like, when the last client dropped off from one particular vertical that we were focusing on, then I just deleted it off of the website and I never talked about it again. And it was just as smooth as that. And then there were others, like, for example, as I raised my prices, there were some people who bucked against that, who said, what's different between your service today versus your service a week ago? It's a valid question. And my answer to that was, well, a week ago I was undercharging you.
Like, I got clarity on my worth. You got a deal last week. I'm sorry, that is hilarious. It's like nothing but my perception.
Yeah. So some of that stuff you have to deal with it with humor, with patience, and allow people the grace for them to deal with their own humanity, just like they're dealing with you first. And also realize that you have to create a vacuum in order for it to be filled with something else. So if you want to attract clients that can afford to pay you at a certain bracket, you want to move from one tax bracket to the other, you're going to have to create a vacuum for that. You can't keep taking the nickel and dime clients if you're waiting for the premium clients because they don't mix. They don't go to the same parties. They don't shop at the same stores. So you've got to create that vacuum and you've got to walk in that confidence, right? And so sometimes that just means going to different networking events. And some networking events are $5 at the door, and some networking events are $1,000 6 months from now. So you've got to be very clear about where do you want to sit. And so for me, I had to make those decisions. And there's a part of running that people don't talk about, and that is when you're running and you take your foot off of the ground. And then, but right before the next foot hits the ground in front of you, there's like a nanosecond where you're suspended in the air, and it happens so quickly and so often because when you're running, you're doing it every nanosecond, right? That you don't notice it. And in business, there's a time between when you've leapt off of one mountain and you're going over to the next one where you're suspended in air, and it's kind of like the Wile E. Coyote. It's like, oh my God, there's a point where you're suspended, you're like, oh crap, am I gonna fall now? And that's very scary. But it's only scary because you haven't faced it before. Every single time, from the time that you were born to now, you have done things that you have no familiarity with. That's how you learned how to sit up. It's how you learned how to walk. It's how you learned how to use the fork and knife. It's how you learned how to speak English. It's how you learned what to say to your mom to get love and attention and what not to say so that you don't get a butt whooping. You learned all these things through trial and error. So it's the same thing with business. And it's just because it's unfamiliar doesn't mean that you can't handle it.
Love it. And so that was the little noise you heard was our timer for 10 minutes. But can this just be our closing question that came in was, because I think it's really important, especially in where we are in our American history, is how does the question is, how do you keep on believing in the good of humanity in the midst of so much turmoil?
I mean, have you seen a child? You know, when you talk to children, they're so present in the now moment, and they're so uninterested in your crap and your drama, right? They just want to play, they want to eat, they want to go to the park, you know what I mean? And I deeply, I don't just believe this, I know this, that whoever you were when you were 4, the things that lit you up when you were a 4-year-old little girl, the things that lit up your client when he or she was a 4-year-old little boy or girl, those things are still there. And even the people who we can label evil or selfish or greedy or whatever, they too have a 4-year-old. Right. And somehow the dreams and hopes and desires and joys of that 4-year-old got lost in translation. And just because I don't understand that person's language doesn't mean that they're not trying to communicate what that 4-year-old wants. And so for me, it's just a matter of, you know, and this may come because I already speak 5 languages, right? So for me, the process of learning a new language means it opens up a whole new world. So I tend to see human beings in that capacity of communication. It's like, you know, it doesn't matter if we belong to the same political party or if we agree ideological in certain things. You still have your humanity and I still have mine. Nobody can take that away from you. And how I treat you, how I view you, isn't contingent on how you view me or how you treat me. It is only contingent on the type of world I want to create and leave behind and the kind of world that I want to live in and who I want to be in it. And with those as my benchmarks, then you could while out all you want to. I'm still going to be respectful and clear and rigorous and, you know what I mean? I'm not going to let you beat me up. You know what I mean? I have boundaries too. But I don't choose to allow people the power to dampen my horizon.
I love that. And I know the theme of this call was becoming the CEO of your life. And even what you just said was still about retaining your power, right? The power to create, the power to choose, right? To be 100% responsible for your life. So for those who are listening to this, that's one thing you can think of, right? How is that showing up in every aspect of your life, including your business? So thank you, Dr. Monikah. This was an awesome kickoff call. And I know the listeners I've gotten so much out of it, you know, and I talked to her a lot. And so this was great for me to hear this and to continue to connect with spirit in all those ways, right? That creative spirit that we all have. Just because.
So can I give people some homework? Can I give an action step?
Yes.
Okay. So everybody listening, I want you to consider, imagine that whatever it is that you think God is, you know, people have different names, Allah, Christ, the Virgin Mary, whatever, right? The universe. Imagine that this energy or this person was coming to your house for dinner, right? Or was coming to your business, kind of like, you know, bring our daughters to work day, right? So it's like bring spirit to work day. Imagine if you were bringing spirit to work. Would you have them sit down in that raggedy chair? You know, would you have them sit down in that messy desk? Would you bring them to that crappy car? Would you have them, you know, lay down in an unmade bed? You know what I mean? Like there's a certain level of hospitality that we have for the people that we deeply respect, that we highly esteem. And I want you to look around your mental state, your emotional state, and your physical state. And if any of that is unseemly and unworthy of the person that you would have in the highest esteem, it is also unseemly and unworthy of you. So take some action to revolutionize your physical, emotional, and mental space, and you'll be on your way to becoming the CEO of your life.
I love it. And so I know you gave us folks homework. So how can people stay connected with you? Maybe they can submit their homework or like experiences with their homework. So how do we get into Dr. Monikah Ogando's land?
Yes. So you can visit my website, MonikahOgando.com, spelled MonikahOgando.com. And if you're interested in sending me your homework so that I can give you some feedback on strategies that you can take on, the simple stuff, right? But still if you have the heart and the courage to do it, it'll revolutionize your life and your business. Send me an email at support@monikahogando.com, and I'll make sure to answer.
Right, awesome. Thank you. We'll put that in the show notes so that you can just click and go off to Dr. Monikah Land and make it easier for you. So thanks again, Dr. Monikah, and thank you, everyone, for listening. And just remember, power is the ability to create your reality. So go forth and be powerful.
Do you think people would like to have the Unlock Your CEO book?
Oh, I think they would love it. What do you all think? Let's see in the chat. Would you like the Unlock Your CEO book? You can type yes. Oh, we're going to yes with exclamation marks. Thanks. So how can they grab your Unlock Your CEO book?
It's very easy. Just go to unlockyourinnerceo.com.
Okay, so it's unlockyourinnerceo.com. Unlock your inner CEO, and we'll make sure that is also in our show notes. And I'm typing it right now in the chat so folks can go grab it now. So unlockyourinnerceo.com. All right, so Dr. Monikah gave you multiple ways you can stay connected with her and even get some feedback on your homework as you all go along. So once again, thank you all for joining the Black Woman CEO Expert Series. And once again, power is the ability to create your reality. So go forth and be powerful. And have a good night, everyone. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and for more Black Woman CEO wisdom and expert tips, please visit blackwomanceo.com. So this is your host, Quanisha Green, signing off. Until next time, remember, power is the ability to create your reality.